Continue to crack down on illegal activities at Union Station, with several arrests being made there over the past week. The arrests coming after a shooting outside the station sent 2 people to the hospital, you no doubt recall, 2 weeks ago. Western Mass News reporter Addie Patterson joins us live from Springfield with more on the recent arrests. Addie.
That's right, Chris. This past week alone, Springfield police officers have not only arrested but trespassed numerous individuals here at Union Station. According to police, the police department officers have been working with management here at Union Station and the PVTA to address issues of trespassing, disturbances, drug dealing, and other crimes in and around the property. This all following the shooting that took place outside the station back on March 25th. Over the last week, 6 people were arrested. Police say that back on March 31st, while officers were working on extra detail, they were notified of possible drug activity inside the station bathroom. When police went in to investigate, an individual identified as Jesus Marin tried to push his way past police. As officers attempted to take him into custody, he removed a backpack he was wearing. Another individual, later identified as Isaiah Kenny, attempted to take the backpack from the scene. During a search of the bag and of the 2 individuals, officers recovered more than 3.5 packs of heroin, 31 vials of crack cocaine, and 1 vial of powder cocaine, along with other drugs and more than $5,000 in cash. Both men were placed under arrest. A similar arrest taking place on April 2nd, when police working at the station found 5 bags of heroin, needles, and a crack pipe on Jesse Blodo. Blodo was observed warning individuals about police presence going into that bathroom just days before. Another drug arrest taking place on April 1st, when police officers seized 7 bags of PCP from Michael Rivera. All 4 men are now facing charges. Police also arresting and trespassing 2 teenagers here at Union Station earlier this week who had been involved in prior disturbances here before and were smoking marijuana outside. Western Mass News spoke with residents off camera today here at Union Station. They tell us while they have noticed increased police presence here, they don't believe police officers are doing all that they can to prevent crime. They tell us they've witnessed several incidents of drugs and disruptive behavior in the past few days alone, with workers seemingly doing nothing to solve the issue. Now, coming up later tonight here on Western Mass News, I'll have more about this past week's arrest and the charges those who were arrested are now facing. For now, reporting live in Springfield, Addie Patterson, Western Mass News.